Are you guys ready to get going with some work? Now, when I am doing notes, I usually set my paper up for 3 columns. Okay. In the first column, I am going to summarize what is actually going on. So, what am I reading? What am I understanding? I may write questions here if there's something I'm not understanding, and that would remind me to go back and talk to the teacher about it. In the second column, I'm going to talk about the rhetorical choices that I see the author making. Are they choosing to connect to the audience in a particular way? Are they choosing to present themselves in a particular way? Are they using particular language? And in the last column, the really important one, I would talk about why. How does that choice that the author is making, why are they making that choice? What's the effect of it? What do they expect for readers to get out of it? So when I refer to 3 column notes, that is what I am referring to, that you need to kind of keep track of 3 different things. And that is going to be, again, the summary. Oops. Trying to write this at the top and my pen is not liking to go there. You want to first summarize it. You then want to talk about the rhetorical choice the author is making. And finally, you want to focus on why. Why is the author doing that? If you have those 3 pieces, then what you're going to find is you'll understand most stuff. But you have to go slow and think these 3 things through. If you try to read this the way you would read the way you would read the Odyssey, hey, I'm going to sit down and just read it. Most of the important stuff is going to slide past you, because when you get to college, what's important is not the plot. It's not the story. It really is the rhetorical choices the author is making and how the author is trying to connect with you. So let's start with Nietzsche. After Buddha was dead, people showed his shadow for centuries afterward in a cave, an immense, frightful shadow. God is dead. But as the human race is constituted, there will perhaps be caves for millennia yet, in which people will show his shadow, and we have still to overcome his shadow. Okay, my guess is a lot of you right now are going, bah, what? Exactly. Slow down. Believe it or not, as small as that paragraph is, it's too large. We have to take a smaller chunk before we can summarize it. After Buddha was dead, people showed his shadow for centuries afterward in a cave. Okay, what does he mean by shadow? How would you summarize that? What is Nietzsche trying to suggest? Okay, an immense, frightful shadow. Okay, because Buddha was a very kind man. He talked about, overcoming prejudices. He talked about finding yourself, accepting others. So what is so frightful and large about his shadow? And notice he's talking about the shadow and not the man. Okay, God is dead. Wow, that's a very famous line. So we have a reference to God here. We have been talking about Buddha. Buddha is not God. Do not make that connection. However, a Buddha was a wise man who kind of had a better connection to the universe. But now Nietzsche is saying God is dead, that there is no higher power. Okay, that's a big idea. But as the But as the human race is constituted. If you don't know constituted, go and look it up. You can't understand it unless you understand the words. So what does he mean as the human race is constituted? Okay. There will perhaps be caves for millennium yet. Okay, what is he using the caves as a metaphor for here? What is he saying that we're still going to have for thousands of years? If you are confused, caves is going to be very similar to, you've got caves are very shadowed. We have shadow here. And then that's reinforced. So there will perhaps be caves for millennia yet, in which people will show his shadow. What are people doing? And we have still to overcome his shadow. Okay, so now that we've kind of stopped and looked at each piece in this chunk, and by the way, it's fine on your summaries if you actually bullet point out each of these ideas as you are going through and understanding them. That is perfectly valid. But the other thing that is also equally valid is to figure out each individual piece, then go back, read the whole thing, and put it together. In many ways, that will get you a stronger summary than doing it piecemeal, because if you read a larger chunk and then understand how the pieces fit together, you're more likely to write a stronger summary. So let's try. After Buddha was dead, people showed his shadow for centuries afterward in a cave, an immense, frightful shadow. God is dead. But as the human race is constituted, there will perhaps be caves for millenniums yet, in which people will show his shadow. And we have still to overcome his shadow. Now, the shadow that Buddha cast is one of trying to connect with the universe, of letting go of materialism, of letting go of the self and reaching the bigger picture. That's why you read Pema Chodron. So what is he saying here? A lot of people consider Buddhism, and Buddha specifically, to be a good guy. But here, Nietzsche is suggesting that people have to overcome. Ah, my pen is dying. There we go. People have to overcome the urge to be, well, to be good, to be selfless. That's what Buddha really suggested. That selflessness is a shadow that frightens us. Now, even though Nietzsche is making references to Buddhism, he comes from a Christian background. So, how is it that selflessness, that this is part of fear? Well, let's think about it. If you are selfish, if you put your own needs first, if you refuse to be a good person, what Christian fear might there be? Okay, so now we kind of get going here. So he's actually suggesting that God is dead. Not that he wants God dead, but that God is dead. And that all we are sort of, that all the selflessness is us sort of hanging on to these primitive fears of hell. Okay, lovely. God is dead. Go be selfish. Okay, rhetorical choices. Man, something had better have just like totally slapped you in the face. Did y'all make that connection? So right now we're seeing illusions, but he is actually suggesting that the real cave here is Buddha. What might it suggest that the cave is Buddha? Okay, so why? Why is he choosing to make references to Plato? Why is he associating the cave with Buddha? Why does he choose to have such a strong, definitive, quite frankly, for many people, offensive statement, God is dead? Why do you think he's making these rhetorical choices? If you go back and think about Aristotle's triangle, how is he establishing himself as the speaker, and what audience is he trying to appeal to? If you can figure that base out, then and only then should you think about, okay, what is the ultimate message? What is it that he's trying to get people to buy into? So right now, what audience, because we can't do message yet, we're not far enough in, what audience do you think he is trying to appeal to? 10 minutes in and we managed to get one sentence. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, 2 sentences, but let's keep going. Throughout immense stretches of time, the intellect produced nothing but errors. Okay, I should probably highlight that instead of crossing it out. Okay. The intellect produced nothing but errors. Some of them proved to be useful and preservative of the species. So the them would be errors are useful and preservative. He who fell in with them or inherited them waged the battle for himself and his offspring with better success. Even though they were errors, they were successful errors. Those erroneous articles of ding, 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 ding. This I'm going to call important because it's connecting back to what he said before. When you see an author threading ideas together, then you're probably looking at a main idea. Pay more attention to it. Those erroneous articles of faith, which were successively transmitted by inheritance, have finally become almost the property and stock of the human species, are, for example, the following. So these are a list of the errors. So let's go back, and again, this is going to take a little bit of back and forth because you got to get your hook in and figure out what's going on before you can put it all together. So throughout immense stretches of time, the intellect produced nothing but errors. What's it mean? Some of them proved to be useful and preservative of the species. He who fell in with them or inherited them waged the battle for himself and his offspring with better success. What does that mean? Those erroneous articles of faith, which were successfully transmitted by inheritance and have finally become almost the property and stock of the human species, are, for example, the following. Okay. So, let's take a look. Everything we have up here. First of all, what is the main idea? Well, what is the noun that it's focusing on? We have errors that's getting repeated many times, and a lot of times by using pronouns. But you also have that idea of faith, which picks up the idea from the previous paragraph. So, using those 2 nouns, what in general, don't get so specific, broaden it out to be more of a summary. What is Nietzsche saying in this section of the text? Go. Okay, so basically he's saying that humans are screwed up little boogers. And then a lot of times the mistakes that we made, specifically the mistakes about faith, the mistakes about God, that those mistakes made us more successful. Think the Salem witch trials. Nietzsche would say that if there were witches, good for them. They were out there seeking their own power. They're doing what they're supposed to do. But because there was an error in the faith, seeking the truth actually made it more dangerous. So the people, a lot of times, that ignorance was useful and preservative in that it kept people from killing you. It kept you from falling out with the rest of the human race. Now, he just told us that he's going to give us a list. What is this a list of? Okay. Always keep in mind where you are in the text. The fact that he's presenting a list, this is a structural difference. When any time an author gives you something that structurally is different, make sure you pay attention to it. So, list items. What are the errors? 1, that there are enduring things. 2, that there are equal things. 3, that there are things, substances, and bodies. 4, that a thing is what it appears. 5, that our will is free, that what is good for me is also good absolutely. Now, he is telling us what things are not, okay? It's a structure called alidity. No, you don't need to know that. However, if I walk up to you and say, oh my gosh, that girl, she's just, not smart. What am I really saying? I'm saying she's dumb, and I'm an incredibly rude human being. However, what he has just done is alidity in that he's told us what's not true. He's left it for us to decide what he's saying is true. So here are the errors. He says it's an error that there are enduring things. What is he saying is true? Okay, he's saying it's an error that there are equal things. What is he saying is true? I love this next one. He's saying it's an error that there are things, that there are substances and bodies. If that's the error, if this is the error, what is true? He's saying it's an error that things are what they appear. If that's the error, what is true? He's saying it's an error that our will is free, that what is good for me is also good absolutely. Then what is true? Okay, this was a list. My question is, do you see how this list fits into that main idea? If you don't, you're going to have to go back and try and figure this out, because this list is intended to be used as further development for this argument. Okay. It was only very late that the deniers, the doubters of such propositions came forward. Now, if these people are denying or doubting these propositions, would these be people that Nietzsche agrees with or people Nietzsche argues with? Always keep in mind that speaker, what attitude are they going to have? So if these people deny these things, then those would be people that Nietzsche approves of. So these are for Nietzsche, these are the truth tellers or the truth seers versus the rest of us who are caught up in these things that aren't true. So we believe that there are things that are things and that things are equal and that things endure. And he says we're idiots. Okay. It was only very late that the deniers, doubters of such propositions came forward. It was only very late that the truth made its appearance as the most impotent form of knowledge. Vocabulary. If you do not know what that word means, you do not understand what he is saying. Do not skip vocab and think that you can get away with it. So right now, what is he saying about the truth? Yep. He's saying that the truth has no power. That you have these truth seekers, and he's associating these truth seekers and associating the truth itself with powerlessness. Why? Well, where does that put all the power? If there's no power down here with the truth tellers, the truth seekers, and the truth, that's because the power historically has been with the errors. So let's keep going. It seemed as if it were impossible to get along with the truth. Our organism was adapted for the very opposite. Oh, dude, what is he saying? Always stop and think about the little pieces. Yeah. How weird. All its higher functions, the perceptions of the senses, and in general, every kind of sensation, cooperated with those primevally embodied fundamental errors. Why are we so fond of error? Okay. Moreover, those propositions became the very standards of knowledge, according to which the true and the false were determined. So he's talking here about how we determine a ruler. Not a ruler as in a king, a ruler as in a yardstick. How do we measure truth and falseness? So what is he saying? That those propositions, he's talking about the errors, those propositions became the very standards of knowledge according to which the true and the false were determined. What is he talking about? What happened with the yardstick society used to determine truth and lie? Okay, and this yardstick, that was true throughout the whole domain of pure logic. What does he mean? Okay, now let's go back. Let's read the whole chunk, and then let's write a summary of this chunk. It was only very late that the deniers, doubters of such propositions came forward. It was only very late that the truth made its appearance as the most impotent form of knowledge. It seemed as if it were impossible to get along with truth. Our organism was adapted for the very obvious, for the very opposite. All its higher functions, the perceptions of the senses, and in general, every kind of sensation, cooperated with those primevally embodied fundamental errors. Moreover, those propositions became the very standards of knowledge, according to which the true and the false were determined throughout the whole domain of pure logic. Okay, this whole section here. What is he saying? Okay. Yeah, he's very much saying that we are designed to seek lies. Now, how in the world does that help his connection to his audience? Well, let's take a look at what are some of the choices that he has made here. Is it your fault that you are designed to seek error instead of truth? Well, he's saying, no, you can't blame yourself. You're adapted for that. It's only very recently that anyone has been able to get away from the lies. So he's saying to his audience, hey, dude, it is not your fault. That, it's only very recently that anyone has seen otherwise. That the organism was adapted. Also, if you're talking about rhetorical choice, look at what you have here. What do you have? Our. What is the effect of using the word our? Well, if he said you're wrong, that your organism is adapted wrong, how would that be different than saying our organism is adapted for lies? The our puts him inside with the audience. He's saying, dude, I am one of you. We are together in this. And we're together, so, you can trust me. If you have a boat that is sinking, are you more likely to trust the advice of somebody who's in the sinking boat with you, or somebody that's radioing in from shore and is perfectly safe? Well, if they're on the boat with you, then they are just as motivated to try and find a solution. And so by using the word our, Nietzsche is really suggesting he's in this boat of ignorance. So in all of this, this is really him giving you an excuse. It's saying, it's no wonder you're caught in ignorance. It's okay. So let's take a look at the next section. The strength of conceptions does not, therefore, depend on their degree of truth. So, conceptions, right now, go look it up. What does it mean? You got to do a little bit of looking. You can look up concepts, and what you find is he's talking about ideas. But he's no longer just talking about the errors. The strength of conceptions does not depend on their degree of truth, but on their antiquity. So he's saying, look, you have an idea here. It should be judged according to how true it is. Instead, what is it getting judged by? Yep, how old it is. That people tend to seek that which is old rather than that which is true. Their embodiment, their character as conditions of life. Where life and knowledge seem to conflict, there has never been serious contention. Denial and doubt have there been regarded as madness. So if life and knowledge are in conflict, we always seek life. What does Nietzsche think we should seek? Knowledge. And he suggests that because, he's going back to what he said here in this top section, that because truth was dangerous, because lies allowed us to work better in cooperation, because lies allowed us to get along with our neighbors, because lies were easier and promoted life, that we actually chose to turn our back on knowledge. Okay. Denial and doubt have there been regarded as madness. What does he mean by that? Okay. The exceptional thinkers, like I can never say his name. Eletics, probably I'm still saying it wrong, who, in spite of this, advanced and maintained the antithesis of the natural errors, believed that it was possible also to live in these counterparts. Whew. Did y'all feel how big that was? We got to break it up. The exceptional thinkers like Eletics. So we are now talking, he is giving you somebody who he believes is looking at the truth. And he goes for Eletics, who, in spite of this, advanced and maintained the antithesis of the natural errors. If you don't know the words, you got to look them up. What does antithesis mean? Okay, so if you are the antithesis of the natural errors, that means you are, you're on the truth. So this guy advanced and maintained the truth. You now know who he is holding up as being true. That is something you might want to go look up. So, who was that? So, did you go look it up? Find Parmenides? Okay. So, basically, what Nietzsche is embracing is this idea that nothing matters, that nothing changes, because there is no matter, there is no truth, there are no senses, it's just all one. So whatever you do, it kind of doesn't matter. So he's saying that that is the truth, that Parmenides and his school, the guy was from Elea, which is why we call it, I can't even pronounce it. I'm not going to try. But he's saying that the truth is that all of your perceptions are wrong and that what you do really doesn't matter, but believing something makes it easier for you to work in unison with others. It makes it easier for you to build a community. Therefore, you were designed to embrace lies. Okay. So, it was they the people from Elia whose school I can never pronounce. It was they who devised the sage as the man of immutable impersonality and universality of intuition, as one and all at the same time, with a special faculty for that reverse kind of knowledge. They were of the belief that their knowledge was at the same time the principle of life. To be able to affirm this, however, they had to deceive themselves concerning their own condition. They had to attribute to themselves impersonality and unchanging permanence. They had to mistake the nature of the philosophic individual, deny the force of the impulsing cognition, and conceive of reason generally as an entirely free and self-originating activity. They kept their eyes shut to the fact that they had also reached their doctrines in contradiction to valid methods, or through their longing for repose, or for exclusive possession, or for domination. Wow. My guess is at this point you're going, I left you way behind. And that's okay. The minute you feel yourself kind of getting left behind, go back and take a smaller chunk, okay? The exceptional thinkers like the people from the school of Adelia, who, in spite of this, advanced and maintained the antithesis of natural errors. So these guys believed that it was possible also to live these counterparts, okay? So you can live in both natural errors and the antithesis. So you can live in both truth and deception at the same time. It was they who devised the sage. So, devised. What do they mean, devised? Go look it up. What's the definition of devised? Yes, they invented the wise man. So, it's not that men developed their own wisdom, it's that they had to kind of invent this idea of a wise man. They invented this wise man as the man of immutability, impersonality, and universality of intuition. So they imagined or invented that somebody could have this state, these three things. Right now, in your own words, what is he saying? What did the people from Elia pretend they could have? They pretended that to be wise, they pretended that they themselves were unchanging, that they knew everything. As one and all at the same time, that they could pretend that they were all the same time, all together. Because remember, that's what the school at Elia said, that there was no change, that we were all part of one great big mass of life, that just we imagined we were separate. Okay, so they invented this sage as the man of immutability, I can't talk, impersonality, and universality of intuition as one and all at the same time, with a special faculty for that reverse kind of knowledge. So they had a special ability for learning through reverse. And he's referring to the fact that one of the men who was from that school was quite famous for using a technique where anyone who tried to argue with him, he basically took their position for them and then pushed it so far that he made it clear that their position was ridiculous and couldn't stand on its own, which, by the way, is a little rude, but he did it. They were of the belief that their knowledge was at the same time the principle of life. So he's saying, okay, so they realized some truth, but if you have truth with a capital T, they realized some truth, some little corner of it down here, and then thought that that was the principle of life. To be able to affirm this, in other words, affirm, go look it up. Okay? To be able to affirm this, however, they had to deceive themselves. So in seeking the truth, they had to lie. They had to deceive themselves concerning their own condition. They had to attribute. Go look it up. Okay. Yes, they had to assume that they had this impersonality and unchanging permanence. They had to mistake the nature of the philosophical individual, deny the force of the impulses in cognition, and conceive of reason generally as entirely free and self-originating activity. So there are three things that they did wrong. The first, they made a mistake between what it means to be a person and what the nature is of thinking about life in general. They made a mistake in the impulses of cognition. What is cognition? Go look it up. Okay. So they made a mistake in that. And they made a mistake in assuming that reason is a free and self-originating activity. Well, if he's saying that that's a mistake, that implies that there is something else pushing reason. So, right now, in this section right here, I want you to go in your notes and I want you to do that first part. I want you to go write a summary. Go. Okay, if you've not written your summary, go back and pause it. Looking back at this, what choice do you think is most important here? You have his choice to make that historical allusion to the school at Elia. You have his choice to talk about the fact that even people who seek truth with a capital T only have a little corner of it. You have his choice to talk about why the audience should be forgiven for being ignorant. Which of those choices do you think is important? Right now, go take them in your notes. Okay, if you have not written down your choice, hit pause on the program and go talk about your choice. Last, definitely not least, because it's the most important. Why did Nietzsche choose to do that? Why did he give people a pass on being ignorant? Why did he give them some excuses in here for that? Why is it important that he pull in this school at Elia, whose name I can never pronounce correctly? Why does he do that? Why does he keep bringing up all the different ways in which people are ignorant? Whatever you decided to focus on as his rhetorical choice, that should match what your why is. These two have got to go together. Okay, if you're freaking out about how long this takes, here's the good news. You do get faster as you get better at this. So don't think it's always going to take you this long. It's not. So let's start right here. They kept their eyes shut to the fact that they had reached their doctrines in contradiction to valid methods, or through their longing for repose, or for exclusive possession, or for domination. So up here, he says, dude, these are the guys who are seeking the truth. Did these guys actually find the truth? Why or why not? Again, do you see how that's kind of a comforting thought, that some of the smartest guys in history were seeking the truth and they couldn't get it? So if you are completely ignorant, don't feel bad, because you're in good company. Lots of ignorance going on. Have you noticed a lot of these philosophers do tend to call us ignorant a lot? It's kind of rude. Okay. The subtler development of sincerity and of skepticism finally made these men impossible. Their life also and their judgments turned out to be dependent on the primeval impulses and fundamental errors of all sentient beings. What is true of all smart people? Yep, they make errors. So even though these people were seeking the truth, they didn't hit it. The subtler sincerity and skepticism arose wherever two antithetical maxims appeared to be applicable to life. That's interesting. Right now, look up antithetical. Okay, now look up maxims. So, what rises up anytime two belief systems seem to be opposite? Because both of them were compatible with the fundamental errors, where, therefore, there could be contention concerning a higher or lower degree of utility for life, and likewise, where new maxims proved to be not necessarily useful, but at least not injurious, as expressions of an intellectual impulse to play a game that was like all games, innocent and happy. The human brain was gradually filled with such judgments and convictions, and in this tangled skein there arose ferment, strife, and lust for power. Looking at that, what caused, well, first of all, go look up skein, and then tell me what caused this tangled skein. Go. Yep. It's all of these different belief systems, these maxims. Everyone is saying something different about what's right and wrong. And because everyone is confused, tangled, what you ended up for was this lust for power. You ended up with all of this strife. So, I got you a head start on Nietzsche. What you have to do is finish Nietzsche up. What I'm going to ask you guys to do is to upload your 3-column notes. Remember, first column, I want to see summaries. In a perfect world, I will see like a longer summary of a chunk of 3 or 4 sentences. But if you are really struggling, I might see you bullet listing. This is what this phrase means. This is what this phrase means. This is what this phrase means. If you do this, you may want to then go back and like give a bit of a paragraph summary just to make sure that you're getting all the pieces together. This stuff is not easy. Column number 2, I want you to talk about rhetorical choices. What choices is Nietzsche making? How does he create a sense of who he is as a speaker? How does he connect with his audience? What message is he trying to push? And how does he push it? So really look at those choices. And finally, in the very last column, I want you to, based off of the choices you looked at, why? So if in column number 2 you focused on, wow, as a speaker, he's trying to come across as a complete and utter buttface. He isn't. But if you were to say that, then I would expect you over here to talk about why he thinks that's effective. So over here, this is really the important work of understanding how authors present ideas. So go forth, run free, have fun with Nietzsche.